So in this video, we're going to talk about 7 major ways your childhood trauma is manifesting in your adult life. So childhood is supposed to be a time of security. It's supposed to be a time where you feel protected and you feel loved by your parents, by other relatives, and by authority, like by people in authority, like when you're in school. So it's a time where you should have had stability, knowing that you are protected and that you would be cared for, which would then allow you to form safe and solid and healthy relationships in your adult life. So that is how childhood should have been. But unfortunately, we, most of us, we come from dysfunctional families, and childhood trauma would have been created, and childhood trauma can take many forms. If you have been physically abused, sexually abused, verbally abused, emotionally neglected, childhood trauma would have been created within you. If you witness domestic violence, if you witness a traumatic event, or if you experience intense bullying in school, childhood trauma could have been created from those experiences. If your parents abused drugs, they were addicts, they were addicted to alcohol and drugs, if you witness a natural disaster, if you experience a pandemic, if your parents got a divorce, if a parent died, if a parent went to jail, all of these would have created childhood trauma. And unhealed trauma causes problems in our lives, and if it's not resolved, it continues on in our adult life, and that is what this video is about. So one of the first ways childhood trauma impacts your adult life, or it's still manifested in your adult life, would be you still have feelings of shame and guilt lingering on. You still feel shame and guilty. As a child, maybe you were raised in a household where you were constantly told when you were doing something wrong, and maybe the only time they spoke to you was to yell at you, was to scold you, was to correct you, or you were just treated poorly by your parents, by your caregivers, and you turn that treatment into a belief about yourself, and you see yourself as useless and not good enough. And then you create this negative self-talk, right, that stays with you. And all of that is building up shame and guilt within you. Or maybe you're in an environment, you were in an environment in your home where you felt like you had to hide yourself. You felt like you were made responsible for all the problems in your family. And you grow up, you become an adult, and you just blame yourself for everything, many things that you have no control over, things that happen at home, things that happen at your workplace, things that happen in your social life. You blame yourself for many things that you don't have no control over, just because of feeling shame and guilty in your childhood and carrying it on into adult life. Maybe you still feel guilty and shame about the abuse you encountered, whether it's physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional neglect, that you have encountered in childhood, even though it was not your fault and you had no control to stop it. You still feel guilty in terms of not being able to prevent it in the past, or not being able to stop it, or not being able to fight back in some way. You still think back and you still feel shame and guilty about it, right? And constantly thinking and feeling like that, shame and guilty, continuously undermines your self-esteem, and it undermines your self-worth, and you lack self-confidence. And all of this affects the attachment you form in adult life, especially if you were abused by someone you trust, someone close to you. You would always think that people are out to get you, that you cannot trust anyone, and you will become overly independent as an adult, and you think that everybody is out to get you and people are going to hurt you in some way. So basically, you grow up and you live in fear your whole life, having feelings of guilt and shame constantly that is linked to trauma, to childhood trauma, can lead to depression. It can lead to social anxiety. And as a small child, you were not able to understand that it had nothing to do with you, and you blame yourself when you were young. But now, as an adult, you need to change the story you're telling yourself and realize that it's not your fault, so you can move on to have a more fulfilling life, right? The second way that your childhood trauma is impacting your adult life, it's manifested in your adult life, is that you get older, you grow up, and you feel disconnected. You feel disconnected from yourself, you feel disconnected from your life. You grow up, and all of a sudden, well, it seems like it comes out of nowhere where you've lost passion for things you enjoyed. You feel stuck in life. You're still searching for your passion. You're still searching for your purpose for a long time. And you have a difficulty sharing your emotions, which means you are not having deep and meaningful conversations, um, which could make you feel like a lack of connection with your family, with your friends, and this could lead to feeling lonely and depression. So, not being able to share your emotions, not knowing how you feel, can lead to loneliness because you're not connecting or having meaningful conversations with people you trust. So, basically, you have suppressed your feelings, you have suppressed your emotions for a very long time, or you stayed in denial. You continue to stay in denial about the issues in your life. You try to escape reality of life by ignoring the problems and carrying on like nothing has happened to you, nothing has happened. And then you enter into adulthood, and then you all of a sudden, apparently, you feel hurt, you feel lonely, you feel tired, you feel confused, you feel hopeless, you feel fearful, you're angry. A mixture of all of these. You could feel all of these. You could feel lost, you confused, perplexed. Everything is just uncertain. You could feel empty, and you could feel numb just because of disconnecting yourself. This trauma that you had in childhood had made make you become extremely guarded and shielded from potential hurt. So then, when you're being guarded all the time and shielded all the time, you become disconnected from yourself, and then you have no clue who you really are. You don't know how you feel, or maybe you feel nothing, or you have no clue of what you're supposed to do because you have been so guarded and shielded for a very long time. You don't know how you really feel about different situations. You don't know what your beliefs are. You don't know where you're going in life because you have been so disconnected from yourself, from your feelings for such a long time. And yes, as a child, your brain shut off your feelings. Your brain may have disconnected from your body or disconnected from the experience to shield you from the pain and hurt from that traumatic event that you had experienced. Maybe you had an abusive parent, or your household was really dysfunctional, and you grow up and you never learn to turn this off, right? You grow up, and there's going to be a lot of cultural norms. There's going to be pressures from society, and there's going to be different expectations from your family, and being disconnected from yourself can cause you to make bad decisions in your career, in your relationships, in your life. For example, maybe your parents, they chose your career for you, and they chose your career for you. They chose what school you are going to go, what field you're going to study. But as you already grew up and you spent many years studying this field, you decide to continue on studying this because you have put a lot of time, energy, and money in these studies, and you decide not to go back. You decide not to follow your own path because you are so disconnected from yourself that your parents and society have decided your life path. Or maybe your parents influence you into dating a specific person, or they believe that you should have been married at a certain age and have children at a certain age. And after a couple months and years, you're with this person that your parents suggest that you be with, and you are in an unhealthy marriage. You married the wrong person, you realize that, and you're stuck in an unhealthy marriage. That means you let your culture, you let your family, you let your friends and society decide for you, because you were so disconnected from yourself for such a long time. And being disconnected from yourself and from your life, and not being able to look inward, would would not allow you to recognize your desires, your passions, your beliefs, and your perspectives. These would always take a back seat in your life, because you're so disconnected from yourself. And being disconnected from yourself and repressing your emotions and your thoughts can cause you physical and mental health problems, complications in the long run, like depression, anxiety, memory loss, headache, migraine, high blood pressure, obesity, fatigue issues, low self-esteem, lack self-confidence, and all of these stuff could happen to you from being disconnected for so long. Another way your childhood trauma is impacting your adulthood, is manifesting in your adulthood, is that you still have trouble controlling your emotions. You wasn't taught to walk through your emotions. You were not given strategies or skills to regulate your emotions, maybe because your parent was absent, a parent died, or a parent went to jail, or they were really busy with work, they were absent. Or maybe your parents, they don't know how to regulate their own emotions. They quarrel with you, they fight with you, they yell at you, they fight in front of you. They get angry with you a lot, almost every day. They curse at you, they yell at you, they use harsh words. And you grow up and you're not able to manage your feelings. Feelings of sadness, feelings of anger, frustration, stress, confusion, boredom, fear, many emotions you're going to experience, and you're going to grow up, and you will have problems with your interpersonal relationships, not knowing how to regulate your emotions, not knowing how to control your emotions. And going through school and college and university, you would have a lot of problems with authority figures, because you're not capable of remaining calm and remaining cool and collected when something happens, when something goes wrong, right? You fly off the handle really quick, you lose your temper suddenly, and you have these unexpected outbursts, and it's embarrassing because you're an adult now, right? You have been abused, you have been neglected in your childhood, and it has caused you now to be impulsive when your emotions get out of hand, when it gets overwhelming and it's out of control, right? Or the other way, some people, they withdraw, they shut down, they take a long time, they take a lot of time alone, and then they might get angry eventually and just disappear for many hours, many days. That is the other way it could go, where you are afraid to express your concerns, you're afraid to express problems, you're not speaking up at work about different issues that may be bothering you, and then you might take it out on your family members, friends, or your significant other, or even pets, right? Some people, you're still overreacting, and you're getting easily irritated about small things at home and at work, because you have trouble controlling your emotions. You grow up, you become adults, and you feel angry, or you feel depressed, and you don't know why. You have difficulty understanding how you feel, why you feel the way you do. Maybe you cry for no apparent reason. Maybe you're moody, and you don't know why. You're just in a bad mood, and it just came from nowhere. You have a low spirit, or you have low energy for no apparent reason. And having all of that, you also misuse alcohol. You could turn to alcohol, you could turn to drugs to hide your feelings, to numb your feelings and emotions, because it's so overwhelming and you don't know how to manage them. And then you have this built up of unexpressed emotions which you have kept inside. And then being under the influence of alcohol, drugs, you might do something ridiculous. You do ridiculous things. You say things you regret, and you embarrass yourself as an adult in public. Or maybe you went to the bank and you asked for a particular transaction, and the teller told you that you might have to come back tomorrow, they cannot help you today, and you have an angry outburst. You yell at the teller, you say degrading things about the bank, about all the staff there, and you insult her personally, right? And that could be really embarrassing as an adult, not being able to control your emotions and flying off the handle and having outbursts. Or you get drunk, obviously, maybe because your emotions, they are overwhelming. You want to escape reality of life. You get drunk, and eventually you cheat on your husband. You cheat on your wife because you probably didn't express, or you refuse to communicate your problems towards them because it's overwhelming, and you choose to drink and then you cheat. And or maybe you're yelling at your partner and cursing and having arguments in a violent manner because you don't know how to control your emotions to stay calm and to stay collected and resolve conflict in a healthy way. And you're in public, you're drunk, and you talk about all your frustrations and your problems in a drunk state, airing out all your dirty laundry, embarrassing yourself, embarrassing your family, getting in fights, arguing while drunk, losing control, and just embarrassing yourself and your family as an adult. Right? So that is the other way, not knowing how to control your emotions, and it goes on into adulthood. The fourth way, where your childhood trauma is impacting your adult life, is manifesting in adulthood, is that you still have low self-esteem, you still have low self-worth and a bad self-concept up until today. You lack self-confidence about who you are. You lack self-confidence about your capabilities. You don't believe in your talents. You downplay your strengths. You still doubt yourself in almost everything you do as an adult. You're afraid to make a mistake. You're afraid to let people down. You're afraid to step out your comfort zone. And being in fear and doing all of that will keep you stuck in life. You would not be able to grow and to progress in your life without confidence and without believing in yourself. That inner voice you have that is constantly negative, that is saying that you're not good enough and that you're not worth anything. Maybe your parents made you feel like that. Maybe they said that to you. And now you're telling yourself this continuously in your mind, and it's stunting your growth, and now you lack fulfillment in life because you have low self-esteem, you have low self-worth, you have a bad self-concept, you lack self-confidence as an adult. For example, maybe at work, you can't take criticism well because your self-esteem is low. You may lash out and become aggressive towards others who are giving you constructive criticism. You might take things too personally because your self-esteem is low, and you're always getting in fights and arguments with your coworker, with your boss, because you make your emotions get a hold of you because you have low self-esteem, you have a low self-worth, you lack self-confidence, so you take things personally. Maybe in school you were bullied as a child a lot, and your parents, maybe they were not responsive to this, maybe they were not aware of this happening to you in school. In addition to that, your home was probably unsafe, it's probably chaotic, unstable, and that made you feel lost and hopeless and even more abandoned. Maybe your parents were too occupied to deal with this bullying that you had in school, and that made you feel undeserving of notice or unworthy of their attention because they're so busy. And then maybe your home is chaotic and you probably were afraid to talk about it, you're afraid to ask for attention, and you retreat instead and you isolate yourself and you feel bad about yourself alone, and you have internalized all these bad comments from children in school, and sometimes even teachers might have told you something, you took it really personally, you feel hurt, and you grow up as an adult and you have this sense of mistrust for everyone, even yourself, and you're not performing at your best ability because you lack self-confidence, you lack self-esteem, you have a bad self-concept as an adult, and due to all of this, you're going to grow up and you're going to feel unfulfilled and unsatisfied, and you might even grow to hate yourself as a result of all of this, having low self-esteem and low self-worth, lack self-confidence. You may be all emotional and you may be complaining about almost everything in your life. You're being too sensitive, you're taking things personally at work, at home, and it just becomes annoying for people around you, especially your co-workers and your boss, right? And there are many other ways, as an adult you can see that you still lack self, you still have a low self-esteem, you still lack self-confidence at home, at work, or in relationships. If you're avoiding conflict at all costs, maybe in relationships, if you're in a romantic relationship and you lack self-esteem, you lack self-confidence, you have a bad self-concept, you would be going above and beyond for your partner, constantly, trying to get attention from them, not paying attention to your own needs, buying them many gifts, over complimenting them, overextending yourself for them, so that they could like you, so that they could accept you, so that they could love you. You're doing all of this so that they could validate you, and you want to get approval, and you're begging people to stay with you, you're begging people to be in a relationship with you, just because you lack self-esteem and you lack self-confidence. You might not be able to make your own decisions. You put your needs last, your wants and your feelings last. You want to please everyone. You feel like you have to say yes to everyone because you don't want to let nobody down. And you're still saying and believing that I'm not smart enough, I'm not capable enough, I'm not attractive enough, up until today. The fifth way that your childhood trauma is impacting your adulthood, is manifesting in adult life, is you have developed self-destructive behaviors, or you are continuing these behaviors from childhood. For example, you overeat, you're still overeating. Maybe you have problems dealing with stress, you have problems coping with stress, and then you overeat. You eat junk food to soothe yourself. Maybe you're struggling with anxiety, you might not know. You're struggling with depression, or you're still struggling with the childhood abuse, maybe sexual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional neglect. And you eat to numb the pain, you're still eating to distract yourself from these thoughts and these feelings. Maybe you eat to become unattractive and obese so that you would never be harassed again. Maybe and also I would add that growing up as children, our parents try to feed us a lot. Some parents try to feed us a lot as a young age. Sometimes we could not leave the table without finishing our food, and we continue like that, overeating, as we get older, because sometimes you're eating and you're full. You're eating and you're full and there's still food left back, but when you're young, you have been told to finish all your food. You still grow up, you're full, and you're still trying to finish all your food. That is a problem I see happening. There's also this culture of where, we all gather together to celebrate different occasions, and everyone takes that opportunity to eat a lot of food. You grow up and you think your culture is right to eat in a lot of food to celebrate. And you see many family members and friends and people in society doing this, becoming big and obese, and you think it's normal, and you continue to eat as much as you want. You use food and going out to as a way to escape your reality, to forget your problems. You go through a breakup, you go out to eat. You have family issues, you go out to eat, you drink. You have relationship problems, you go out to eat. And that is causing you to like become unhealthy and obese, right? But other than overeating, there's other destructive, self-destructive behaviors like gambling, playing video games for long hours, watching many movies and series for long hours, even days, escaping reality of life, over shopping, overspending, going on vacations you can't afford, using alcohol and using drugs, as I mentioned before, cutting yourself, pulling your hair out, misusing your credit card, being irresponsible financially, having unprotected sex, neglecting self-care, talking bad to yourself in your mind, isolating yourself from friends and family, being passive aggressive, procrastinating, hooking up, and doing all of these destructive behaviors. You're still doing that as an adult. Maybe you started when you were a child and you're still continuing on doing all these things like gambling and video games and hooking up and eating too much. The sixth way your childhood trauma is manifested in your adult life is that you have an insecure attachment style. And having an insecure attachment style means that when you grow up, you have difficulty in your romantic relationships. All your romantic relationships have been, most of them have been messy, they have been toxic, they have been chaotic, they have been unhealthy, and they probably all ended badly. Right? So this video might be going on a little long, so more than likely I will have timestamps below where you could click on whatever section of the video you want to. I'm going to go through 3 insecure attachment styles. If you know your attachment style, you can look at the timestamp and click it, right? So one of the first insecure attachment style that you have from growing up, from the interaction with your caregivers, with your parents, you have created an anxious, preoccupied attachment style. And if you have this, that means your parents were not consistent in their emotional security they provided. Sometimes they show you love, sometimes they care about you, sometimes they give you attention at one point, and then they reject you, or they ignore you another point, and they do that repeatedly, right? They might have been distracted sometimes, or they were just not there for you when you really needed them sometimes. And in adulthood, when you have this attachment style, you become really clingy and needy in romantic relationships. And I have a video on 5 reasons why you are clingy and needy in a romantic relationship if you want to know more about that, right? So with this anxious, preoccupied attachment style in relationships, in romantic relationships, you would require repeated validation from your partner. You would require constant reassurance to know that your partner loves you and they're not going to leave you. You would never feel secure in your relationship. You always think that your partner is going to abandon you, right? And this could be really annoying for your partner it could be annoying, and it could be really demanding on them to keep having to constantly ease your grief and your distress in the relationship, right? So you grow up and you cling to someone. You might more than likely cling to someone who is not interested in you, a person who doesn't want you, right? And having as an anxiously attached person in dating and relationship, you would be you would have actions of bending over backwards to get love and attention. You trying to change your partner into what you want. You might be overextending yourself. You always want to rescue them, you want to solve their problems, you always want to save them in some way. And these are all possible behaviors of having an anxious attachment style, right? When you're dating and in a romantic relationship, and being like that, doing all of that, bending over backwards, can increase the chance of you being taken for granted and devalued, really easily. So you're an adult now, and you have this anxious attachment style, and you would be over texting, you would be calling too much, you're messaging too much, you're daydreaming about them all day, you're fantasizing and planning ways to get with them, to be close to them. You, you're thinking about how you could change them, how you could fix their problem. You're over explaining your behavior. You emotionally dumping on them, oversharing, talking too much, saying too much, and as an adult, that could be really embarrassing for you. You finding it hard to focus on your own life and just thinking about them, and always focusing on their good qualities and justifying their behavior could cause you to stay in a relationship for longer than you should, right? So the other insecure attachment style I would talk about is the dismissive avoidant attachment style. And if you have this attachment style, that means that your caregiver, your parents, they ignored you, or they rejected your emotional needs as a child. They didn't show love, they didn't show care, they didn't respond to your emotional needs. That doesn't mean that they didn't love you. However, they provided food, they provide clothing, they provide shelter, they give you education, a space in school, and all of that. And then you grow up and you become ultra independent in order to protect yourself from being rejected again. And you you grow up and you get in romantic relationships and you push people away. You alienate yourself in the relationship. You shut down when there's issues. You become cold with your partner. You when you start to feel like there's a closeness and that you're bonding and things start to feel like a relationship where you could actually receive love, you you push them away. You use silent treatment as a dismissive avoidant. You become defensive when your partner tries to call you out on your bad behavior. You try to avoid difficult conversation. You switch the topic. You're emotionally unavailable. You ghost people. You disappear for many days, months, sometimes even years. You go missing and without explanation. And then you pop up again and you act like nothing happened. Right? That's the type of behavior you would have in a romantic relationship as a dismissive avoidant. You would refuse help, you refuse emotional support, you accuse your partner of being clingy, of wanting too much time, or being needy when they probably might be acting normal and healthy. You fear closeness because you believe that they would eventually hurt you. You just don't know how a healthy relationship really look like. And as an avoidant with an avoidant attachment style, you you seek out love and you seek a relationship, and then you push people away when things start to become vulnerable, and that could be really confusing. Know that you look crazy. I'm not saying that you're crazy, but it's confusing not knowing how you feel. Sometimes you stonewall your partner when you need to address important topics. You stonewall them. You ghosting and disappearing and dropping off the earth without explanation and then showing back up like nothing happened is really not a good look, right? Sending mixed signals and being stingy with physical affection, and only showing affection during sex can really put you in a bad light, right? Being overly secretive, deciding you decide things about your finance, you decide things about your career, your travel, and other plans, and then you don't have conversation with your partner. You make your decisions alone, and then you try to tell them when it's too late. You really find it hard to collaborate and make decisions with your partner. This could cause conflict in your relationship, right? Having an avoidant attachment style would look like you're very rigid with your rules. You're not flexible, and everything seems like they have a higher priority than the relationship, and this could make your partner feel abandoned and not important, and that will create problems, right? Slowing the relationship down, sabotaging the relationship can be really confusing for your partner and even yourself. Not acknowledging feelings, really expressing your feelings, keeping your partners at arm's length, being cool and withdrawn. All of these actions comes from having a this avoidant attachment style. You know, it seems as if whatever you're doing is always more important than relationship, and doing all of that and being like this can really push your partner away and create conflict and sabotage your relationship. You always find ways to not be there for your partner. You're not there when they really need you, and you act like you don't care. You might care, I don't know. Maybe, maybe you were dismissed by your parents. Maybe you were taken advantage of in a past romantic relationship. Maybe you were neglected and devalued by your parents. Maybe somebody did you wrong in the past or something like that. But now, as an adult, you need to show up better. Most men, they have this problem. They have an avoidant attachment style, and showing up like this would not get you a healthy relationship, right? So the other attachment, insecure attachment style I will talk about would be the avoidant attachment style. No, the fearful avoidant. That is the combination of anxious and avoidant attachment style coming together, right? So this a fearful avoidant attachment style. This will mean that you have experienced and been exposed to abuse and neglect, and you would fear intimacy growing up and having close relationships. You would really fear intimacy, right? Um, your parents, they probably displayed frightening behavior towards you. They behaved in a chaotic way. They were aggressive with you, and you saw them as scary. But then sometimes they're showing you love, so that could be really confusing for you, and that is how you develop this fearful avoidant attachment style. However, you have a strong desire for intimacy, because when people accept you, you feel really good about yourself. So you want to form interpersonal you want to form a strong interpersonal bond with people, but you still want to protect yourself from rejection. So as a fearful avoidant, you seek out relationship, you seek out commitment, but then when things start to get serious, you pull away. You leave when things get too intimate, right? And when you're in relationships and you grow up, you don't trust anyone. You have a difficulty sharing your emotions. You would seem really disconnected from your partner, and this could be really confusing for your partner. Showing love in the beginning and then withdrawing after, when you start to feel vulnerable, when you start to feel a closeness and you start to feel like there's a bond happening, you pull away, right? So those are the three insecure attachment styles that you could have developed from childhood, and you need to resolve this because you don't want to be looking crazy. You're not crazy, but know that the other person might see you as something is really wrong with you if you're oversharing, over texting, or if you disappear for many months, or if you start to show you're close and you have affection in the beginning, and then when things start to get a little bit intimate and vulnerable, you pull away. That could be really confusing for your partner, and if you want a serious commitment, right? So the seventh way your childhood trauma is impacting your adult life, it's manifesting in adulthood, is you have developed different defense mechanisms, and there are a lot of defense mechanisms, and I will only mention two right now. And one of the most popular defense mechanism that I see is a denial. You refuse to accept your problems in life. You pretend like your problems don't exist. You carry on life like everything is fine, and you indulge in destructive behavior, that which I mentioned before, like gaming, watching movies, and gambling, over shopping, and hooking up, and drugs, and so on. And then you can't fix your problem, and it gets worse. So to know more about this, you could check my video on consequences of suppressing your emotions, which also is linked with being in denial, right? And there's this other defense mechanism, which is displacement, and that is when you sense that reacting to the original source of your frustration could be unacceptable, and it could be dangerous. So instead, you find a less threatening subject to that you can use as an outlet for your negative emotions like anger and so on. So instead of reacting directly to the problem, you take it out on your pet, you take it out on your partner, you take it out on your children or your spouse, right? So for example, your boss, he or she, they probably scolded at you in a meeting for poor performance, maybe in a project you were doing, and you just left work and you're in a bad mood, and you become really frustrated and irritated by everyone you encounter after. So you take out your frustration maybe on other co-workers, or maybe you went to a bar, restaurant, you took it out on the waiter, or you take it out on your friends, and your kids or your pets, as I was mentioning. Or maybe at home, your husband, he's not helping with chores, and he's not helping you raise the kids, and then you ask your kids to help clean up and get ready to go to bed, and then they respond to you, they start to whine and complain, and then they start acting rebellious, and then you get angry with your children, you get angry, you explode on them, and you accuse them of never helping you around the house, instead of actually speaking with your husband and talking and having a meaningful conversation about chores and raising kids. So that's displacement, and there are many other defense mechanisms, but those are just two, right? So those are 7 major ways that your childhood trauma is manifesting in adult life. It's impacting your adult life. And there are other ways that childhood trauma could manifest. And I want you to listen to this video as a future parent, to see the importance of being stable, and being a fully functional parent, and healing your and resolving your childhood trauma. And to help you also to understand why people are the way you are. So if you're an adult now, you're all grown up, and you're still having sleeping problems, nightmares, flashbacks of a traumatic event, or something like that, means that you have some work to do on yourself. You have to resolve these childhood trauma. If you could probably have diabetes or some heart disease, and it's linked to childhood trauma, right? So for example, another way, you have multiple children all over the place. You keep having children out of marriage, out of wedlock. That's a problem. Or you're in a unfulfilling job right now, because maybe you lack education and lack qualification, because you dropped out of school when you were younger, because maybe your parent was absent, and you had no guidance and you had no protection, and maybe your dad wasn't there to provide the funds for you to go to school, and now you're in this unfulfilling job. That is another way that your childhood trauma has manifested in adult life. Or you're in a marriage and you're divorced, you had a divorce, your parents had a divorce, you don't know what it looks like to have a healthy relationship. Um, when you have issues with yourself and your relationship, you go to cheating. Maybe it's like what your parents did, they cheat, or you lie and you hide things. You hide your true feelings, you hide your true thoughts, and this causes problems, and you eventually you have a divorce, right? Another way, you probably went to jail already. You went to jail already, or you're in jail because parents were absent, or your parents were drug addicts and they weren't there to take care of you fully. Maybe you're an adult now and you're thinking of suicide. You maybe you almost died from overdose of drugs, alcohol. Maybe you got murdered. Well, you're not dead because you're watching this video, but maybe like you know someone who were young and they got murdered because of lack of protection and guidance from their parents, and maybe they got involved in drugs and crime, and they eventually this eventually led to their death, right? Another way, you are homeless, you don't live anywhere, you ran away from home, you went to live with other family members, friends, or romantic partners, and you move a lot. And while doing that, you got abused, you got sexually abused, you got physically abused, you got emotionally abused, whatever, verbally abused, all of these by moving and living with different people. And then after experiencing all of that, you could probably become promiscuous, and eventually you start to do sexual acts for money. Maybe you meet another adult that took advantage of you, but you encourage it because you need money and you need protection and shelter and food, and you stay with them. Or you're in a gang now, you're a gang member because your parents probably was absent. Maybe your parent went to jail. Maybe um, your parents abused drugs, alcohol, lack of provision, protection, and now you're in a gang. And know that these things happen to children who experience childhood abuse. So you need to be fully involved in their lives to avoid all of these things like getting killed and being homeless and going to jail, right? Sorry about that. If you are adult now and you're like angry or easily annoyed with others, or you just have a lot of resentment towards parents or family members for not loving you, know that you need to resolve this because these trauma could drag you down in life, right? You also need to know how to repair after fights, after having a fight, and know how to apologize. You probably lack, you didn't see how a healthy, how is it, how to resolve conflict in a healthy way. You don't know how to empathize, you don't know how to be sympathetic with others because you did not have this demonstrated to you at home by your parents. So, or you're just not in touch with your own feelings because you suppress them so much and been in denial for so long. Now it's hard to know how you feel or how somebody else feels to have empathy. And now you look cold and heartless, and you might not be that as an adult. And also, for men mostly, you another way it's manifesting this childhood trauma is manifesting in your adult life is that you fear commitment. Today a lot of men they don't want to get married, they don't want to have a commitment. They are most of them you are dismissive avoidant, you are fearful avoidant, or you're emotionally unavailable. You you look wishy-washy, inconsistent, um, you lack emotional intelligence, you change your emotions quickly, you change your mind quickly, you're unreliable, you walk away, you avoid difficult conversations, and know that know that you look fickle, and most men struggle with fear of commitment, right? And also, last thing I will mention is you're passive aggressive as an adult in relationship and work because you have been neglected, you have been abandoned, emotionally abused, physically abused, and you have low self-esteem. and now you have become passive aggressive. And I have a video on called types of sneaky and subtle passive aggressive behaviors that we are all guilty of. You can check that out, where I talk about, if you're criticizing a lot, blaming people a lot, you're always disagreeable, you're always irritable at work or at home, you're stubborn, you procrastinate a lot, you miss the deadline, you forget important tasks every day at work, you're hostile almost every day, you're complaining about being unappreciated almost every day, you're avoiding responsibility at work, you displaying resentment to your boss and your colleagues almost every day, you're always bitter and angry and dissatisfied at work. And no, you could just be mediocre at work. You have mediocre performance at work. You reach late every day. You're always in opposition and conflict with your boss. Many things. And people are leaving you out at work because you don't take criticism. Many things is happening today in your adult life because of childhood trauma. So I'm going to wrap up this video right now. It's kind of a long video, but it's important. So as a child growing up and developing, you you looked at your parents and your caregivers as examples of how to behave and how to interact with others and the world around you. And if your caregiver or your parent behave in a dysfunctional way, if they were toxic, they were unhealthy, you live in an unsafe place or chaotic place, chances are that you would mimic these behaviors, and you would have the same unhealthy behaviors even if you did not intend to be like this, right? If your parents were not in a position to raise you properly because they were drunk or they were high or someone went to jail, um, they abused drugs, all of these things, um, all of these things are still happening to you. They're manifesting in your adult life, right? If your parents were not in a good position to raise you because of being high and because of being drunk and because they were involved in gangs, they were involved in crime and violence, and now you become an addict of drugs and all of that, right? So all the trauma we experience in childhood, especially if it's unresolved, um, it really affects how we see ourselves, it affects how we communicate, it affects our relationships in adulthood, and it affects the fulfillment and the success in your life, right? I'm not trying to downplay your experience in childhood, but trauma drags you down in life, and this video is just to create awareness of why you are behaving the way you are behaving now. And as an adult, there are certain behaviors that you really need to fix and get rid of. So I hope you work on this trauma, and I hope you have a more fulfilling and satisfying life. And thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.